Smajik says, hey, Steven, I got kind of curious. Have you worked any other jobs besides in the art industry? No, not besides like my childhood job at like a pizza place. I've been quite fortunate that I've been able to do, I was able to make my living off of art like right out of college. That's quite lucky. Loving the highlights on the beak. Thank you. Thoughts on cognitive drawing? I don't think I've heard that phrase before. Generally, if it's super conceptual, I have a lot of doubts. I think the body makes drawings, not the mind. My mind can account for very little of what I'm doing right now. If I stop, I could analyze it, but it would all be kind of ad hoc after the fact, you know. My body is clearly the master. It's got no problem. It's just doing it. I could just talk to you guys while I do this, you know. It's like if you've watched these streams for any amount of time, if it was my mind that makes the drawings, how could I weave a complex oratorical structure while making a drawing? You know? The answers that I give, the responses, the kinds of topics that we're talking about here. Now, language is certainly dealing, I mean, as direct gets, language is certainly dealing directly with concept. You know, it needs to be able to be handed off to another person. It must be taking up most of the processing power on the mind side. And yet I can do my best moments of drawing while basically completely disassociated. So yeah, I think it's the mind, it's the body that does it, not the mind. And lie to yourself about this to taste, basically. You know, the body doesn't care. You can take credit for all its hard work as much as you want. It doesn't matter. It's just going to keep doing it. Yeah, it'll keep doing it for you. Not me. I give it credit. I'm like the only artist in town giving it its credit. People are too cerebral these days, too in their heads. Do you think all repetition is equal when it comes to drawing for improvement? No, it's not equal. I think it's all useful. I think basically all repetition is equal, but some forms of repetition are probably more useful than others, you know? There's exercises where you do like structured repetition, you know, like you can copy a reference and then after you've done a copy of the reference from reference, then try to redraw it just from memory. and then even do it a couple iterations more of that. I'd done that exercise. I went through a phase where I did that exercise a bunch, and it was useful. I think it was like extra useful. But all things like that, it has diminishing returns. It's like the most useful repetitions are the early repetitions, and then you get less improvement from them as time goes on. And don't forget that really the most important thing in art, the thing that you should repeat the most, that is going to have the biggest impact, is you should repeat making pictures you care about. That's the most important thing to repeat. Stephen, do you have a type of checklist when creating a scene for imagination? What shot type, lens, composition? I don't start with that list, but when things go wrong, I can produce that list, but I don't start with it. Usually I like to compose very intuitively, I just want to see what I pull out. I do a lot of iterations, so I know this pose on this bird demon, there's an iteration of this in my sketchbook that I did with my morning coffee, where instead of a bird, it was like I think it was actually, I was trying to make it the warped face demon we did on the last stream. And then when I was in the shower, I was thinking about it, as I do, just do a drawing, think about it while I shower, drive, do another iteration, just constantly thinking about this. But then I was in the shower and I was imagining that sketch and I was working on it as I was shampooing my hair. And I was like, maybe it's a bird demon. Instead, I was thinking of like Hieronymus Bosch, he does a lot of bird demons. And then that's how we got to this. So I like that intuitive place to start. I like just letting the unconscious come out. But then when things go wrong, I'll get as diagnostic as anybody, and even though like shot type and lens things, like I know enough perspective that I can literally I can put a scene on a short lens, on a long lens, with technical perspective if I need to. So, that sounds like it's super hard. It's not. It's like if you're learning perspective the right way, it's like one of the first things you'll learn. But all that stuff is definitely possible. You learn a little bit of technical perspective. It's like you can actually, put it on a 35 millimeter lens. Just Google what is the cone of vision on a 35 millimeter lens. You have the cone of vision. I don't know what it is. Let's see. What is it? What is the cone of vision on a 35 millimeter lens? That's approximately a 54.4 degree field of vision. Well, I'm seeing some conflicting answers, but you could take an answer and then you make a cone of vision that is to that degree, and there you go. You've got that lens. Sully Dietz gives $2. Thank you so much, Sully Dietz. I appreciate it. Sully Dietz says, hope you're well. This drawing is mwah, mwah, mwah. I pulled my platysma doing that. I for real hurt my platysma, dude. I was mwahing it so hard that I pulled my platysma. Thank you so much, Sully Dietz. The longer lens, the more zoomed in you are, right? Not actually. It really is like that's a way to think of it, but zoom is actually kind of like a separate function on if we're talking camera lens, it's like a separate function on a camera lens. It's zoomed compared to a wide angle at the same location, right? But that's less what's useful about lenses. Like a 35 millimeter is a longer lens, which the more important thing for composition is that it's going to flatten the perspective. And something like a wide angle, let's say like a 50, I forget what a 55 millimeter, something like that, which is a classic like prime lens people use on cameras. That's going to have a wider angle, and that's going to exaggerate or emphasize perspective more. It's been a while since I've thought in the camera lingo. So someone in the chat might let me know that I have that exactly backwards. I'm just the camera lingo was never my strength, but that's the more important stuff. It's like, are you emphasizing perspective or are you flattening perspective? Because when it comes to drawing, zoom is really going to be more of a function of like crop and things like that. The more interesting question is like, if you're looking at a box, does it look very flattened or do the points converge very severely? Stephen, do you think your views have changed with the years of audience interactions over the various subjects? Yeah. It would be hard to make a inventory of that. But certainly, yes, certainly my views have changed. Not just changed, but like the interaction with the audience has like, forget changed, it's revealed like, oh, I didn't know that was a problem. Like there were problems people were having on the journey that I had never clocked. Like I was actually surprised such a thing could come up, and the audience revealed that to me. So it's not just that my views have changed, but new views have opened. Maybe I could try to, what's like the biggest thing that I've changed my mind about in the past 5 years? Yeah, I guess I haven't had to change my mind about anything because I've been right about everything the whole time. That means I'm perfectly cognitively healthy, right? That means nothing's going wrong over here. Let me think. What's the biggest thing I've changed my mind on from the audience? The first thing that comes to mind is I think back in 2019 when I started this, I thought that if you were in a good place sort of mentally and with the incentives, if I remember correctly, I think I felt like for most artists, it would be a good idea to go pro, as long as you weren't doing it for bad reasons. I mean, I still think that way in a lot of regards. There's like a lot of things about like the amount of time you can spend sort of running your art through these different processes. There's definitely a lot of benefits, but I think in aggregate, I thought at the time that going pro was like generally advisable for almost anybody who was in the right headspace and who had the time, obviously, who didn't have another career or other responsibilities. And I think I've changed about that. I think that as I've talked to people more and found out more about what they really want from art, I've accepted that like actually for more people than not, probably going pro will get in the way of a lot of that stuff. And I think I've much more come to a it's not for everybody conclusion, you know. And I don't mean for even not. I mean specifically like for artists. Like it's really not for everyone for artists. I think, yeah, years ago I thought if you can go pro, you should. And now I'm like, if you can go pro, really think about if you want to do that to your practice, because there might be a calmer life more conducive to happiness and joy. Just even though you could go pro, just let another job support it. And, you will have time to do your work. You probably do the same amount of work on average as somebody who's freaking out about art being their career. I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts about it now, but I think that's the big thing. I think that's the biggest thing that has changed. Balua Babe says, if you're using a shorter perspective, people are talking a lot about lenses. I think the human eye is somewhere between 35 millimeter and 50 millimeter. Yeah, I think the pocket rule I've heard is that a 50 millimeter prime is like closest to the 60-degree cone of vision of the human eye. People usually say the human eye has about a 60-degree cone of vision, but of course that's, you know, that's a rule of thumb because we have two eyes, right? So, you know, there's no, and perspective is all an illusion. Perspective's not real, right? The only thing that's actually happening is photons are being occluded. That's the only thing that's occurring, and that produces the illusion of perspective in our real world, in our real experienced vision. You know, perspective is sort of a mathed out, close enough approximation of that. Daryl says photography is my literal job, so I'm here to help with the lingo if you want. Yeah, nice. Wider lens, 10, 24, 35, emphasizes perspective more because they have a wide field of view, and longer telephoto lens, 135, 200, 400, flatten the perspective, lower FOV considerably. Yeah. So I was saying 35 was longer, but in the big view, you know, there's Balua Babe says, if you're using a shorter perspective, it makes sense that it can emphasize particular elements. Do you think a more flattened perspective makes it more difficult to lead the eye? Is there a use case? There's tons of use cases. Looking at movies, you know, once you see it in movies, there's tons of reasons you would want to do a flattened perspective. You know, it creates more of a sense of pattern. It creates an artificiality to the view. You know, it just produces particular emotional effects. Movies bounce back and forth between the different types of lenses specifically for those reasons all the time. So there's tons of use cases. As you watch a movie, next time you watch a really artfully shot movie, we're not talking Mormon Housewives of Salt Lake City. When you're watching a really artfully shot movie, try to tune in to like what shots feel very flat, looking at have a lot of perspective, and what doesn't, and see what they're. I think my subscription to Shot Deck expired, but maybe I can look at some free. Yeah, my access to. Yeah, I ended my subscription to Shot Deck, but that's a great website that categorizes film shots by all sorts of categories, and one of them is what lens they were shot on. DJ Charisma says, Steven, I have a very limited view of the art industry. When I think of how to make money as an artist, I generally think of the gaming or comics industries. Could you give a broader view of how artists make a living? I mean, artists make a living every sort of way. The things that you mentioned, gaming or comics, are being a hired gun, right? Somebody else tells you what to do and you do it, or in a lot of capacities, there they are. There's also independent versions, obviously, you know, make your own game, make your own comic. But most of the people working in comics are being asked by a company to deliver a particular thing on a deadline. If you're an artist working in gaming, you know, you're making marketing art, concept art, textures, you're doing that all to spec, you know, you're doing that, you're being asked to do those things. There is, of course, just the fine artists. People make money selling paintings through galleries. Nowadays, you can also sell directly to your audience. So there's artists who sell their art, either their originals or their prints, directly to their audience. These days, most people make their money doing that. Sorry, that's going to be misunderstood. I don't mean most artists, that's how they make their money. I mean artists who sell prints, who that's their income, things like that. Most of them are making their money at conventions these days. They build an audience online. it's a little harder to monetize that just completely online. It seems most people don't really buy prints online. But at a convention where they can meet you and interact with you, their prints seem to do very well. You know, it's a good, you know, they like the artist, they want to meet them, say hi, they of course want to support them, they're going to buy something, they buy a print. And people can make a lot of money at conventions, even in one weekend. You know, if you market it right, if you have the appropriate amount of stock of something, and you work your ass off at the con all day, people make lots of money in one convention. So that's the way people are making money these days. You know, there's the occasional YouTuber, things like that. Most artists these days, if you're going to do the influencer thing, art is very low interaction for the influencer economy. So almost no artist can sustain an influencer life off of sheer views and clicks. You know, what do I mean by that? Like let's say a Mormon housewife of Salt Lake City, she gets a lot of views and clicks, a lot of engagement. She can just make money off of views that feed ads or sponsorships as well. You know, please sell Yerba Mate tea and make sure your ass is in the shot, right? So they could do that. But people interact less with art. You know, even if you look at like the really high sub art YouTube channels, the views on their videos are generally, not everybody, but generally they're lower for the sub count than a middle schooler doing a prank with a similar amount of subs. So if you're gonna do that in art, you usually need to do something else. You know, your YouTube, your Instagram, your TikTok or whatever has to be a funnel to something else that you're selling. Art books, you know, maybe you do educational stuff. Maybe you have a graphic novel, something like that, like you stickers, you know, merch, more merch type stuff, maybe make shirts, hats, whatever. And that all depends on the kind of artist you are, you know, what kinds of products you want to make and provide. But there's every way under the sun. You know, art is it's going to be unique from person to person. And it's unlikely that you're going to be able to copy anybody else's method, you know?
これ次なる時もっと優さそうだね。資産基礎が使ってましたもんね。レベル15だ。地下希望、ショートスピア。どうしよっか。どの構成でいこう。これ新ジャンっぽい地下。ダウンしたら地下希望だな。ダウンしたら地下希望。逆地の世界は使い道なさそう。 性行為持ってる人いないそうだから。ピラミージ HP 回復変換で雷のダメージと貴族回復へ紙、いや仕掛け棒に命をかけよう。鉄壺、これ鉄壺じゃねえか。間違えた。紅葉がと思ったら鉄壺だった。オッケー。あ、このサイクロプス君がね、でも強いからね。初心者2人チームよりはナグラとレベル情報言ったしな。さすがにブロムギル初心者によりエーデンリングナイトリン買わせて最初のボスがこいつってのはさすがにちょっと悪いことをしてる気がする。活動って言って何回も誘った結果、一人は今日はもう寝ると言って一回行ってしまった。まあ普通に最強ボスだからな、今んとこは。この後どんどんやばいの来るけど。
Turn this fan back on.
はい。僕はバカです。
Is there such thing as over-reliance on using reference? No, not if it, not if your goal for your work is, mostly referenced. You get what I'm saying? Like, if your goal for your work is to work mostly from imagination, you know, maybe you want to make something that's generally imagination driven, like comics or something, then yeah, there probably would be over-reliance on using reference. But there's also been comics where every panel has a reference photo associated with it. You know, look at someone like oh my god, I'm blanking on his name. The most famous comic book painter, the guy Alex Ross. There's a reference photo for anything Alex Ross has painted, basically, right? I mean, they rely on. They're meant to look like superheroes, but for real. So he very wisely has tons of good reference and shoots his own reference and things like that. And you can see YouTube videos of him doing reference shoots and things like that. Maybe more directly, it's like if your goal is to be a life portrait painter, you want people to sit in front of you and get their portrait painted in oil, why would you ever not work from reference, right? Like, that's obviously the kind of work that always needs the insight of the real thing, a real analog in the real world. So if it aligns with your goals, then no, there is no over-reliance on reference. If it doesn't align with your goals, then there would be. Everything in art is about what do you want?
Huh?
What do you want? What do you want? Thank you, Brian Antonio. Roundbrush says, Steven, how long is too long for a color value study? I found myself using entire days on painting studies, still lifes, film ref, etc. I could be making my images, but the studies are so effective. Come on. You know what I'm gonna say. Don't try to bait me. You've been here before.
痛い痛い痛い。
You know that I'm gonna tell you, just do your images.
痛ー最後これはまずいこと。
If you have to ask, you've spent too long doing studies. I'm not saying you're done with studies forever. Just you need to make
あだだだ
your
だ
thing.
だだだだだ
That's gonna teach you what's actually relevant in the studies.
あ痛い痛い痛い痛い痛いあ痛い。
You're not gonna use everything that you learned from random film still studies. You need to make contact with your actual work, stuff that you're actually trying to make to teach you what you actually need to study, what you actually need to learn.
最悪だ。あー最悪だ。焦るな。焦りすぎ。焦りすぎ。うわ。焦っちゃいかんで。
Hate to tell you, but it's true.
うわーもう穴やってても当たっちゃうんだよな。ありがとう。もうみんな中だろあれ。大丈夫か。
Hi, Steven. Is there a reason as to why you usually paint male figures? I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts
パーツは
on that. Generally, I like the, Generally, I just love, anatomy. And obviously, anatomy applies both to male and female. But, with a male, you can push anatomy really far, which again, I like anatomy for its own sake. And when you push anatomy really far on a male, it doesn't feel like a statement. People just accept it on its own. If you push anatomy really far on a woman, it feels like a statement. You know, these days, you know, we might call it a muscle mommy. That's a relatively new term, you know, so there's kind of like a bucket for it now.
最悪
But even before that, and even still having people say, "Oh, that's a muscle mommy," that still feels like a statement. You know, it feels
あ
very
いて
loaded
もうやる
and
あやる
intentional.
バカやる
But before that,
雷
yeah, it
悪
always
す
felt
ぎ
like
るだろ
it raised a question. You know, it always begged all these questions that I just found were distracting. You know, they
うわー
it almost always just opens this odd conversation about like, well, shouldn't she be softer and
も
more
あ
beautiful?
私はありです
And it's like, wow, don't you have an original viewpoint on what beauty is? It's
私
like
は
such a
ありです
boring conversation gets opened from that horseshit. So, you know, I just always gravitated towards males because for what I like to express in art, it left a cleaner emotional substrate that let me just focus on my expression rather than raising all of these loaded cultural questions. You know, I don't know if you can tell from here, but I was like, I don't really, you know, I'm not in art for like beauty and the soft, you know, like it's never been much
No, sure.
much interest of much interest to me. It's not
あ
really
しろ
why I make
しねえ
things.
か
I have other interests. God, what an answer. How much easier would it be? It'd be so much easier. I'd just be like, because I'm gay. Yeah, I draw guys because I'm gay. That'd be so much simpler than having to get lost in this whole long conversation about, like, what does it really be? You know, ask all these loaded questions if you exaggerate the anatomy on a woman, a culture, and the zeitgeist, and what a beauty saying. It's like, it's because I'm gay. It's 'cause I'm... Big envy for the gay artists who have been some of the best. Fuck, Leyendecker, probably Michelangelo was gay. Damn, they had it down. Sargent might have been gay. It was probably her.
We did it. Yeah. Nice, Shulibak. Close. Very nice. That's close.
Oh my God, what a thing to open up the stream to. Whatever. Whatever. Does your wife know? The classic joke. Does your wife know you're gay? Oh yeah, what's his name? LOL.
Yeah, よかった。やっぱ火力ないと。
Oh my God.
火力ないとダメだね。
Steven, have you seen the painter that paints religious things but gay, like priest licking the holy candle sensual? Jesus.
雷で削られたり。
No. No, I haven't seen that, and I'm not looking at that on stream.
頭振り付けスタンプ横にかわすと頭ブンプってやつで開始後に食らっちゃう。
My mother, dyed in the wool Catholic, will be crossing herself right now. She's probably listening right now. She's going, ay, Dios mío. Ay, qué pecado. She'll be crossing herself right about now. Woo. Hey, Aus Art Hole. Aus Art Hole. Happy to have you here. All right, I've been going for about 4 hours here. I'm starting to get hungry, so I'm gonna start thinking about getting off here. Easy. Calm down. All right. Get your head out of the gutter. I said the magic word, and now everybody's head is in the gutter. All right. I'm just thinking about finishing up. Stop. Easy now. Easy, tiger. Well, let's see how this one starts looking. Once I start gradient mapping it. Yeah, I'm gonna have to mess with that a lot. Matt says, but for real. But Stephen, for real, what you say is true. I've drawn transformed male anatomy and female anatomy. At conventions, men don't tend to look at transformed male anatomy and project themselves onto it. But women do. They'll see transformed female anatomy and feel something. And it typically leads to a conversation about a larger social issue. Yeah. Amen, brother. I mean, I think that, I don't know. I think anybody who deals in non-traditional depictions of figures and forms, at some point, you're going to have an encounter with that. And if it's like, if those social issues are one of the direct interests of your art, it's like, that's perfect. It's like, lean into it and do more with it, use it to your advantage. And I think probably that would be a good thing, like for career, let's say, and things like that, and making a connection with the audience. Just for me personally, those social questions were never really my focus. So it made more sense for me to step back from what was producing them. I wasn't that interested in grappling with those particular issues. It's like I don't know. I'm like one step behind. I'm like, forget about identifying with one thing or the other. It's like, I'm more interested in like identifying with the body at all, So those things to me sort of, they muddy the waters, Muddy the waters. I might change my mind about all that. That's definitely something that could change, but yeah. I just find focusing on men really, no one asks those questions. No one has those questions about men, about transforming men, transmuting them, breaking them. It's really weird. One more question if time permits. Yeah, I'm hanging out for a bit. I'm good. Go on, more questions. I'm not leaving right now. Steven, draw the Crow Man pregnant. Oh, God. I have to leave to you. I've got my stylus in my glove like an Assassin's Creed thing going on. Steven, I'm diving into the world of filmmaking in a third world country. Am I signing myself up for a lifetime of underpaid, underappreciated, no sleep, pursuing delirium type of life? I don't know. Maybe. I mean, statistically speaking, yes, certainly. Statistically speaking, almost certainly. Mason says, Stephen, do you have any wisdom for the problem of the type of art you love, want to create, being in direct conflict with what your hand and mind naturally gravitate towards? Like, I adore more cartoony art styles, but my natural self gravitates towards drawing realism with advanced rendering and shading and stuff. But I wish I could just flip a switch in my brain and have a more natural feel for simple cartoonish art with a greater emphasis on good color rather than advanced draftsmanship. It's tough. That is tough. That's a tough situation to be in. I think it's possible with effort to move in either direction, to either get the hand to align with the mind or to get the mind to better accept what the hand naturally wants to do. I think either is possible. On either path, you got to make sure that you're prioritizing what's actually producing joy. So the question, the assessment in your situation would be, what is more joyful? The cartoony end product that you feel aligns with what you really want to do? Does the satisfaction, the joy, the excitement, the exhilaration of that cartoony end product outweigh the frustration that you feel of your hand never having a peaceful moment, of every stroke that it puts down is sort of done from a place of resistance because it's going against its natural tendencies? You have to really assess which is it, which is more powerful, that satisfaction or that resistance. And on the flip side, if you go with your hand, how dissatisfied are you actually with the end results of what your hand naturally produces? You've got to draw the line in your own heart. You know, you have to be the one to decide. I will say, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, and it's biased, but I would be inclined to favor what the hand wants to do. The cartoony art styles, like adoring them, it's like, I'm not trying to belittle what you like or anything like that, but it's taste, and tastes change. You know, what you love now, the content, the style, it's like, ask yourself why you love it, right? Like, do you love it because that style is associated with stories that you love? Because you can tell a story a different way. You know, a story is not trapped in any particular style, or it's the rare story that is trapped in a particular style. Or is it really that you just love that style? Well, it is also okay to just be a fan of that style and not work in it. That is allowed. It's okay to do that. Like, you can be a different kind of artist, but love that kind of work as the kind of thing you want to consume. But you can leave room for you and for yourself to work in a completely different way that brings you more experiential, bodily joy, moment to moment. And like I said, my biased opinion is that the bodily joy is more important. I hope that this is consistent with all the other stuff I say on here, because I do believe drawings are made by the body, not by the mind. I think that people are too cerebral these days about art, and they're too caught up in concepts. So if your body is naturally producing not the cartoony style, what you're calling like a more advanced draftsmanship, rendering kind of a thing, I'm inclined to think that that's because the body knows things that you don't know. It's interested in those things for a reason. There's something the body, and maybe this sounds weird if you haven't heard me talk a lot, but people who've heard me talk a lot will not be so thrown out of left field when I say the body is trying to philosophically contemplate something about form. The body is trying to philosophically grapple with a truth that it feels is hidden within the advanced draftsmanship, within the realism, within the producing of an illusion. And again, for my money, the body, which is the, To me, it's 98% of the art and not the fucking linguistic cognitive concepts that flow in and out of our heads while we work. The body is so much more important that I believe its preferences and opinions should be prioritized over the. I don't trust thoughts. They're what are they? They're less than air. You can't even say they're dust. What on earth are they? What the fuck are thoughts? It's like, at least air I could feel. It's like, a thought is less than that. A thought is less than my breath moving in and out. It's like the most gossamer thin, insubstantial fucking nothing. And we think it's us and that it decides what we need to do and it decides our preferences. And, we have these outsized reactions. Like you're saying, like, it's creating this dissonance, this conflict between your hand and your thoughts. And again, this is my biased opinion. Feel free to push against me, but I'm like, I would much rather do what the body does. I would much rather go with what the body wants to do than with what the thoughts want to do. The thoughts, they can't cash out on goddamn anything. They can't. They just lead us astray, confuse us, take us down wrong roads, betray us, start being mean to us, ruin our self-esteem, ruin our confidence, make us envious, make us hurt our families, people we love. It's like they're the betrayers, What the hand wants to do is this impossible sculpture carved in ratios of muscle bellies to muscle tendons. Like none of this is accidental, right? Muscle memory belittles it, makes it seem like something small. It's like, I can only produce the things that I am capable of producing, the things that come out, because literally everything about it, and I just holding up my hand, but it's like my calf is involved even, right? Everything about the structure of the body of light allows that to happen. And God help you when you realize that it's happening automatically, that you don't need to think your way through it, that the body really does do the drawings. It's like, this is not to be taken lightly. This is no mere thing. And again, it's the whole body. If you need proof of that, just stand up right now and just lift your right arm in front of you and notice that when you do that, you will feel a sensation in your calf on your left leg. And you may just think the first time that you do that little flicker is just nothing, just a random muscle firing. But you'll notice if you lower your arm and raise your arm and lower your arm and raise your arm, that little flicker is repeated every time in your calf on your left leg, on the opposing leg. And that's, for every movement, there must be an appropriate balancing act within the anatomy of the body. So to raise your right arm, your calf has to adjust ever so slightly down there on the opposing leg. And actually, your whole body is doing that with every movement. So I hold up the hand to symbolize, it is the body that does the art. But truly, for real, it's your whole body. It does every little thing in the process. It does every little thing in the process. So for me, I'd go with what the body wants to do, with what the hand wants to do. That's my preference. But everybody's on their own journey. There's an ant on my screen. What the hell? I never noticed that? The thing with the calf and the hand? Yes, of course you never noticed that, because nobody asks you to notice. Because the world is caught up in the wrong things. Because nobody ever asks you, no one ever tells you to invest a considerable amount of your time just observing what it is to be alive, right? I talk about this a lot on here, I know, but it's like no one ever asks you to pay attention while you're moving. No one ever asks you to do that. And here you're experiencing like, oh, there's actually a useful insight to be gained from such attention, right? It's like there's so many more. Like it really is an important, useful thing to do. And no one's asking you to do that. Everyone's too busy asking you the horseshit that's depressing you. Everyone's asking you to You're asking yourself to focus on all your goddamn problems, and you know you have to get the career that your friend has because or else he's better than you. All this fucking crap that we're all wasting our time with, right? It's like, what have we done? What have we done? Like, there is so much to learn from just move your body and feel what actually happens, right? That's why whenever I'm talking on the spiritual side, I often say that one of the beautiful things about anatomy is that for an artist, learning anatomy is the equivalent of the Buddhist charnel ground contemplations, right? It's like the charnel ground contemplations, that is to say, meditating in a charnel ground. There's no access to a charnel ground in most places anymore, but meditating in a charnel ground is a focus for deconstructing and reflecting on the nature of the body and how we relate to it as experience. Again, it's very few people who have a realistic way to do that anymore, but learning anatomy as an artist is a charnel ground contemplation. It changes your life to learn, not conceptually, but to learn in your bones, to know inside out, such to the point that you can craft it from imagination, to learn the mechanics of the body. Once you do that, you can no longer forget, oh, I have a structure. I have a terribly specific structure. Again, to say these words means nothing. To live the insight that you have a terribly specific structure will change your life and reduce stress and clarify things and make it easier to do the things that you want to do. And yes, that links with what I said, just observe what it actually is to move and to be and to take action in the world and you know, lifting the arm, feeling the left leg. Oh, there's actually my whole body doing even the simplest movements, right? Okay, so it's the whole body that does art, freedom, spiritual ecstasy. Art is fun, so you'll actually do it, blah, 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 blah. It's all fucking linked, right? But you can link even more things with that, right? It's like, notice, yes, that the whole body does every little action, right? That every little movement of the fingers actually has a balancing act going on everywhere. You just have to feel it. No one told you to stop and feel it. It's like you can just move your finger, you feel stuff happening in your body, and you do it once, you think, oh, it was random. You do it again, repeat. It's like, oh, it's the same things every time. It is actually terribly specific, highly mechanized. You can add in, how do I move the finger? What is the volitional activity of moving the finger? Inspect that. So you include the mental things as well. Insight, art, happiness, happiness. Back to something that we spoke about in the stream. You can actually improve at experiencing joy. One of the aspects of that is getting out of the way the crap that is distracting you from experiencing joy. And the insights do that. The insights erode the myths. They erode the myths. The myths create our intuitions. The myths are underneath our intuitions. They're before concept, they're before emotion. Intuitions drive emotion. You have a particular emotional reactions to particular things that happen, not all, you know, there's certain just primal evolutionary things, but the complex emotions that we experience in the modern era are driven by axiomatic, uninspected assumptions that come from our intuitions, and the intuitions are structured by myths. Insights erode the myths and allow you to Indiana Jones style swap in a new myth of your own choosing before the whole temple comes crumbling down. And that is an erratic and manic explanation of the path of the spiritual journey that art will take you on. And now I'm very hungry, so I will probably leave it at that. But you guys get me all worked up. You know, you get me all just. Oh my God, oh God, we need to leave the bullshit behind. You know, people are wasting their time. People are wasting so much time. Hi, Sam. Good to see you, man. I was thinking about you the other day. I was putting something in the closet, and I was thinking, I wonder what Sam's up to. That sounded like a bad joke. I realized as soon as I said it sounded like a bad joke. I did not mean that as a joke. I mean, I was literally, because I've been moving, so I've been spending a lot of time rearranging things in closets, taking them out and putting them in. And I just remember specifically what I was loading into the downstairs closet. And I thought, I wonder what Sam's up to. I haven't talked to him in a long time. I hope you're well. I know. Yeah, the closet door. As soon as it came out of my mouth, I was like, the actual factual moment where I noticed that, where I thought about Sam, was literally, it just brutal. Brutal. Stephen, do you think that the philosophies we hold come from how we feel? Yes. These days I consider myself, I actually don't know if this would be the philosophically right term, because in philosophy all the terms actually have hyper specific definitions because it's all academic. But like, I think of myself, not all, but like I'm like an emotivist. Like at this point, I really do think reason is sort of an illusion for most people in most situations, and people are just following their emotions in all situations. Basically, I think our emotions, how we feel, both in a subtle, very like primordial sense, and in the more elevated high emotions. Yeah, I do think that they are our number one motivator for what we believe, which includes our philosophies and also things that we consider to be reasonable. And for me, that at least begins to help make sense for why, if reason was truly reason, people should not be able to disagree about reason. But at least for my definition of reason, it's like the fact that people disagree so much about what is reasonable is basically a guarantee that reason is not what's occurring here. I think emotion is mostly what's occurring here. And I don't think human beings are as interested in reason as they think they are. And I'm not saying that from the position of being like, but I'm casting aspersions. Like I'm saying, like I said, I'm an emotivist. I think I'm not as interested in reason as I might wish I was. When I look at my actions and what I base my life on, it's like, I have to admit, like, emotion first. I want to emotionally feel good. Emotions guide everything that I do. I base my beliefs on what gives me the good warm feelsies, and I don't know. I think that's what most people are doing. And I think that kind of is what we were all to me, it makes more sense that that's what we are structured for, It's weird to think that, it's weird to think that our meat sacks would have evolved through natural selection for reason. It does make more sense that our meat sacks evolved for emotional cocktails that can convince us to believe anything, including that we are being eminently reasonable. That makes more sense to me. If reason is robust in any, like, robust with a capital R, if reason really is powerful, I kind of go with Aquinas there. I'm just like, that, to me, that almost be proof of God. It's like, it seems so highly unlikely that reason would obtain in the universe that we find ourselves in. And that these particular beings would have any noticeable or significant access to it, that it's like something stranger must be going on if that's the case, What were we talking about? What were we talking about? We're out in the weeds tonight. I think I see a lot of lawbreakers out here tonight. I think I see a lot of lawbreakers out here tonight. We're talking about crushing fundamentals, Stephen. We're talking about grind set. Oh, good. Get that grind set. Get it. You know what I'm saying? What do you think of analytical philosophy and attempts to formalize reason on that note? I don't know enough about analytical philosophy, I think, to give a real statement on that. It's like, yes, clearly people have made progress in that lens, right? Like, when you say analytical philosophy, I'm thinking of like the kinds of things that, it's an academic philosophical paper with, it goes deeper than syllogisms. It's like if this, then that, and all that. It's like, you know. The rocket, but yeah, reason is not seeming as robust as you would hope it would be. And yeah, analytical philosophy. Yeah, I just don't know enough about it. It's certainly nobody's living their lives based on analytical philosophy, right? There's people who claim reason is how they lead their lives, but that I think that's mostly an illusion when people say that. But no one's living their life according to analytical philosophy. I don't. More minded. If you're looking for a little community, consider joining the Patreon to support. If you want to support even more bigly wise, and you also want feedback on things, there's things like Form for Imagination, my drawing course, and or at least if you get the feedback version of that, then there's feedback. And what else? Those are the big ways to support the channel, but you can always support by just telling a friend about the channel, a fellow weirdo, because you hear the kind of stuff we talk about here. It's never going to be mainstream. It's never going to go viral. It's never going to be for the mass audience. So the only way this keeps going and that the channel grows is word of mouth. That's the only way that's ever going to happen. You know, it's not. We're not going to make stuff here that is going to drag people into clicking. You know, no clickbait around here. It's just not going to happen. I want to say goodbye to Pixel Art Journey, Magic Bones, Darude117, who says, why is everyone ignoring me? Did I just ignore you? You just got not ignored. You just got not ignored. Darude117, boom. Now you look crazy. Now you're being gaslit. Brian Antonio, goodbye. Goodbye, Sam Lamb, the precious Sam Lamb. Goodbye, OKM. Goodbye to Renyi. Goodbye to Pixel Art Journey. Wait, I think I already got Pixel Art Journey. No doubles allowed. Goodbye to Reaching for Divine, Sweet Matt. Goodbye to Smooge. Smooge. Goodbye, Chady on Fire. Says, so no World War III plans? I don't think so. I don't think I have any plan for World War III. Goodbye to Kyokusei, who says, thank you for your religious sermons today. No problem. My pleasure. Thank you for listening. Goodbye to Discord email, Daryl Grant, Buddha Belly, Cursed Fetus, Gross Girl, Seth H, Discord email, and of course, the one, the only, For Blasphemy. All right, everybody. I'm going to head out, eat some lunch, walk some dogs, do some work. Peace for real, homies. Goodbye, Stevla LeBlanc. Goodbye, He.Design. Goodbye, Hafu. Onioragraphist. Onioragraphist. Safi, Seth H. Bye, everybody. Thanks for hanging out. Hello, everyone. Like I'm an artist. Overall proportions of these guys. It's like you're not going to go on any tour
conclusion to this trilogy. At the end of World War II, World War III promised to up the stakes with gritty, reimagined characters and the entire world on the line. There is no doubt that there is a huge market for the conclusion of this trilogy, with an audience of billions and sales easily It's been over a century since World War I was released. What was
Field, Missouri, where we had the Battle of Wilson Creek, where General Lyon was killed on the 10th of August. The bravest man I ever saw was General Lyon, after he was completely surrounded and pulled off his horse. He picked up rocks and fought with thousands of men around him. He struck Will Morgan in the face with a rock, and John Morgan shot him with an old-fashioned horse pistol, killing him. How old are you? I'm 94. 94, pretty good age for a young man. Yes. Now you ask me how old I am. Well, how old are you? 84. 84. You was in the same war.
This allows him to be the master of his own story. He is free, even in his punishment. Sisyphus is the hero in this story, a tragic hero at that. Camus imagines Sisyphus
This is the pro move. Fuck. Yo.
To me.
They don't want to see your brother succeed. Okay. Ah. I was standing alone. That's why I had to do it. I had to resort to it because 3 people on me. 3 people on me. What am I supposed to do? What can I do? What am I supposed to do? You tell me, huh? Who you kidding, huh? Look at the goalie. Goalie's out. Goalie's out.
Here.
Let's go. Pass. Pass. Somebody pass. Somebody pass. Watch this. Doggy, doggy. This is just the first of many. Wait, why are people? Yo, Daniel, why are you putting? Why are you putting the red card in my chat? What the fuck? There is no penalty here. What are you doing, idiot? Defense, 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 play defense. Pass it, pass it. Why am I calling it? Good job, idiot. Okay, now this is the time. Woo! Do it. Yep. And hit the ball.